Alright, good day to everyone. So this is a recorded session or recorded presentation on week 5, and the lessons are seen in your learning activity sheets, which is describing proportion. So I decided to record this presentation because I will not be I cannot able to meet you for a synchronous session. So while viewing this presentation, kindly comment your name and sections to our chat box for your attendance, and also if there are some questions here, you can also comment your answer. Okay, by that way your responses will be noted as your participation for this session. So this meeting will focus on two competencies. First is describing proportion. Alright, so when we say proportion, take note that it is composed of two ratios. We are going to compare two ratios, and describing proportion will be ang gagawin lang natin dito will determine whether the two ratios are proportion or they equivalent. So yun yung ating pag-aaralan dito sa describing proportion. So let us learn proportion. Proportion is a statement of equality between two ratios. The fundamental law of proportion states that the product of two means equals to the product of two extremes. So you will be learning about this in solving for the unknown part of a given ratios or proportions later on. You will apply this fundamental law of proportions. It can be written in two ways as two equal fractions. So there are two ways in rewriting or writing ratios or proportions. So in the first is using fraction. So A over B is equal to C over D. So this also describe a proportion. Okay, this is a ratio on the first part, equivalent ratio to the second part of the equations. That's why they call it proportion. So the inner terms, yan yung ito pa in semicolon, just like this. Okay, A is to B is equivalent to C is to D. And the inner terms BC are called means. Take note about it that the inner terms in a colon using colon is the means, and the outer are called the extremes, just like as you've seen in the presentation. Alright. Okay, so yung AD are extremes, BC is means. Meaning, we are going to multiply, get the product of the extremes, get the product of the means. Alright? So that's all about describing proportion. We have two ways to describe a proportion. First is using fraction, and second is using semicolon. But take note that the means and extremes are the product, or if we are going to solve for the unknown part. Okay, later on I will show you how to solve for the means and extremes. But before we proceed on that, this given proportion is read as 20 is to 5 as 4 is to 5. Or you can write you can read this as fraction, like 2 over 25 is equal to 4 over 5. This is also considered correct. Okay, so to prove that two ratios form a proportion, you must prove that they are equivalent. Okay, to do this, you must demonstrate that the relationship between numerator is the same as the relationship between the denominator. Okay, so to learn for that, you must consider this given given example here. So determine whether pair of ratios form a proportion. So we have here 4 is to 2 as 6 is to 3. So before we proceed to describing whether these two ratios are proportional or equivalent, you must learn how to transform it into fraction. So 4 is to 2, you can write it as 4 over 2. And take note here that order matters. Be consistent, 4 over 2, then equal. Then you must also select the first ratio or the first element. The first term is 6 over 3. Okay, in ratio, order matters. It cannot be true if you write 4 is to 2 and then inequal mo siya sa 3 is to 6. That should not be the correct form in fraction. Okay, so be consistent in writing column form into fraction form, meaning the first will be considered over the second and first second. Okay, so be consistent. Take note of the term. Consistency is matter. Okay, is a mass. Okay, so let's continue. So we are going to tell whether this will form proportion. A proportion is a quality of two ratios. Take note of that. Equality of two ratios. So the product of the means is equal to the product of the extremes. Okay, consider this means extremes. Okay, but before that, you just follow this. Yan, you cross multiply. So 3 times 4 will gives us 12. Is this equal to 2 times 6? 2 times 6 will gives us 12. If the two quantities are equal, then automatic that the given ratios are form proportion. So that by that way we can evaluate that the two ratios is really form a proportion. So that is yan ang isang paraan para malalaman mo kung yung dalawang ratio ba ay nagpapakita ng proportionality. Yun ang isang paraan na pag pinag-multiply mo by cross-multiplying, the two products should be equal. Okay? So what about yung means and extremes? Just like this, means times the extreme, or it should be equal to the extremes. So the same, 4 times 3 will gives us 12. And 2 times 6 will gives also 12. So kahit alin dito ang i-consider mo sa means and extremes or the cross multiplication, you will determine that the two ratios forms a proportion, right? So that's how we determine proportion. Let's consider number 2 and let us tell whether these two forms proportion. O, tignan niyo dyan sa ating letter B. Example, letter B. Okay. So, another, pinakasimple kapag transform kasi natin yan into fraction. Again, in transforming a column form into a fraction form, we just be consistent. 2 over 5 as 3 over 8. 3 over 8. Oh, take note. Tignan nyo ulit. Nauna yung 2, numerator mo din yung 3. Denominator yung 5, denominator yung 8. So, yan sinasabi ko na consistency. Be consistent. Okay? sa ratio, importante ang consistency. Okay, even in real life, okay, di ba? We want consistent. We want consistency on what, halimbawa lang, about your statement, about your stories. Kung halimbawa nagkukwento ka, you must be consistent about your story. Kasi pag you are not consistent, meaning you are liar. You will be called liar, di ba? And that's why consistency is very important. You must tell only the truth, to be consistent. Okay, so that's how you integrate proportions in real life, in reality. Consistent in everything that you must say to everybody, or that consistency na tinutukoy kayo is the truth, yung katotohanan lamang. Be consistent about what you tell on your sa ating kaklase or sa inyong tao na nasa paligid natin. Okay? That consistency na tinutukoy natin is only the truth. Okay? And because the truth will be your weapon in whichever be the future. What I mean is, yan ang pinakasandata mo sa anumang hamon ng buhay mo sa hinaharap. Okay? So, the truth. Only the truth. And diyan din nasusukat yung pagiging honest people. Honest person. Alright? So, that's how we prove proportions. We just get the product of the means and extremes, and if the two values form equality or they are equal, then that two ratios form a proportion. What about in example B? Is this forms proportion? Okay, para malaman mo yan, may kailangan kang gawin, di ba? Yung process natin, yung means or in extremes or the cross multiplication. Okay, let us multiply 2 and 8. So 2 times 8 is 16. Alright. Is this equal? If we multiply the extremes, or 3 times 5. Are these two quantities equal? Okay, as you can see, 15 and 16 are not equal. So meaning this is not a proportion. Okay, this is a false statement. Ayan, o false statement. Meaning, the two ratios do not form a proportion. Okay, kapag true statement, the ratios form a proportion. Okay, so lagi natin i-consider the true statement, or we must be proportion. Okay? Kasi pag false, meaning that's negative, we are spreading false a statement, or false statement, or false story, false whatever it is. It does not form proportion. It is not consistent. So this given ratios are not or do not form proportion. So by these two examples, I know and you can determine whether the given statement or the given examples are proportion or not. So in activity 1, you will do the same process. So the given is already in a fractional form. So alam ko ang gagawin nyo na lang dito is to cross multiply. Yan, cross multiply nyo lang yan, and then is this are the two quantities form or have equal value. Okay, so you will write strong if the two ratios are proportion. You write weak if they do not have the same value after multiplying this. Okay, in 6 to 10, what you're going to do is to form this into fraction para mas madali. Or you can do the means and extremes. Means meaning the inside part, extremes is the outside part. So if you multiply the means and if you multiply also the extremes, are the product are equal? Ayun ang tanong natin. Kung equal, then that is strong. If weak, meaning that the two ratios do not form a proportion. So in activity 2, so the directions is identify the means and extremes of the following pairs of ratios. Then use the product to describe whether proportion or not. Then put a check mark for proportion and cross mark for not proportion. So examples are provided in this activity. So in letter A, yan, means and extremes. So the means, take note, the means is the inner. So 6 times 4, 24. And the extremes, 8 times 3 is 24. Now description, proportion. So what will we use? Use check mark if for proportion. So this is how you do this activity. You just perform the means and extremes. You just write here and then describe. What is your description? Are they equal? If yes, put check. If no, put an X mark. Okay? So that's how you do in this in this activity. So anyway, there are 2 activities only in describing proportion. So what you will do in describing proportion is just performing the simple means and extremes or the cross multiplication process. But take note, if you do the cross multiplication process, you must able to transform the column into fractional form. And take note our term being consistent. Alright? So let's proceed to the second. And also do not forget to write your reflections with the aforementioned discussion. Complete the definition of proportion. Proportion is the blank. Okay, so you'll give your description or your what you have learned about proportion. And you read also 2, 3, and 4 to guide you in your reflections. Alright, so for the last competency for this session is this time applying the fundamental theorems of proportionality. Ano yon? Fundamental theorems of proportionality. The product of the means is equal to the product of the extremes. So yan yung sinasabi natin kanina. To solve for problems involving proportions. So this time now, we are going to solve for a missing part of a given proportion or any related problems involving proportions. So in problem solving or problems involving proportions, we can use cross product to test whether 2 ratios are equal. So yun yung ginawa natin kanina. And the properties that follows here, itong mga ito, are several ways of rewriting proportion that do not alter the meaning of their values. So properties of proportion number 1. Okay, so cross multiplication property. In a proportion, the cross product are equal. So just like this, 6 times 4 is equal to 8 times 3. So their product are both 24. So the first property is yung very familiar tayo kasi yan yung ginawa natin previously in the first competencies that we discussed. In the second is alternation property. Ito yung alternation property. In a proportion, the means or extremes may be interchanged. Okay. So, ito rin yung sinasabi ko din na consistency. Ito, 6/8. Wait lang ha. Alternation meaning if you interchange yung ito, 6 at saka 8 and then 4 and 3. So, observe nyo ito. Sa ratio kasi, importante yung order eh. If you flip this, you make 8 as your numerator and also your numerator becomes your denominator. This is now 8/6. Therefore, you will do the same to the second ratio. Okay? So, inverse property ang tawag natin dito. But here, iba tong alternation. Sa alternation naman, titignan nyo dito. Okay, tignan nyo yung 6 at saka 3. Ginawa yung 6/3 and then 8/3. Maybe there's something wrong in the given, no? But this is not alternation. 6/3. Maybe this is 4. Maybe typo error ito. Sa alternation, dito sa inverse kasi baka malito kayo. Sa inverse property, meaning yung order, if you change the order of the first ratio, the other ratio will also change. Okay? Yung numerator mo magiging denominator, yung denominator mo magiging numerator. If you do that here, you must also do the same on the second ratio. But in alternation, you can do this 6/3 and 8/4. Okay? I repeat, there is an error in your learning activity sheets. This should be 4. Okay? Take note, pwedeng 6/3 or 8/3. Why? Bakit may alternation? Okay. Tignan nyo maigi ito. If we will do cross multiplication, so if we cross multiply that, we will get 6 times 4. Equal pa natin na 6 times 4. That is equivalent to cross multiply din natin ito. So we will use the cross multiplication. So 8 times 3 magiging 8 times 3. Now, if I want to divide both side by 4, pag mag-divide tayo ng 4, may iwan dito ay 6. 6. And then may iwan dito sa left is 8/8 times 4 or 8 times 3/4. Now, I want to eliminate 3 here. So, I will again divide both side by 3. So, this will be cancelled. Therefore, the new fraction will become 6/3 and then 8/4. So, in alternation property, this is a twisted from the cross multiplication property. So, in other words, to make it short, that this ratio, the numerators of each ratio will then be form another ratio. You can also form another ratio. Okay? So, take note of this. Alternation property is also derived from the cross multiplication property. And yan yung ine-emphasize ko lagi, that in mathematics in learning mathematics, you must be able to learn that the properties are interrelated, meaning that property naging shortcut lang siya, but it came from the broader property, wherein yung pinaka top properties ng describing proportion is yung cross multiplication. Kaya lang na-derive itong alternation property because mas madali nga naman Pwede rin pala yung 6 over 3 at saka 8 over 4 na gawin. And yan pala ay galing din sa cross multiplication property. So yan yung learning mathematics is really interrelated competency or interrelated skills that you must also learn. By that way, kapag na-learn nyo yan, for sure, everything will be easy for you to learn in mathematics. Okay? So let's proceed to the fourth property, which is the addition property. Ano naman itong addition property? In a proportion, yan. Tignan ninyo ito. In a proportion, the numerator may be changed using the properties of equality. So here is an example. 6 over 8 is equal to 3 over 4. This is our main ratio. Then, here, 6 plus 8 over 8 is equal to 3 plus 4 over 4. What did you observe here? Okay, if we add the denominators to the numerator, and you also do that the same pattern in the second ratio, then that will form another proportion, which is also equivalent to the original ratio. Okay? Nakuha ninyo? Ito, i-explain ko na mas simple. Sa addition property ng ratio natin, what will we add here is not the same. Diba? Sa addition property of equality, kung anong inad mo dito, yun din dapat ang i-add sa kabila. But this is different because the addition property in proportion is what we are looking at is the pattern. The pattern here is 6 over 8 is our original ratio, and if we add the denominator to the numerator, that pattern will also apply to the second ratio. So the numerator of the original ratio is 3 plus, what will we add? It is not 8, but our pattern is the new denominator, which is 4. Okay, so take note of that in properties of proportion, that our it is either the numerator or denominator ang i-add mo, it is yung other part niya. Ito yan. Diyan galing yan. Okay? So, this will become 6 plus 8, that is 14. 3 plus 4, that is 7. And you copy the denominator. Okay? So, what about the subtraction property? In a proportion, the numerator may be changed using the properties of equality. Okay? Sa subtraction naman, what we will do here is to nagkamali siguro sila dito. This must be minus, ha? Kasi subtraction. Okay? So, there is an error again in your learning activity sheets. Pakisulatan yan ng minus kasi subtraction. So, the difference lang nila, pag plus yon, plus, that is addition property. But if we use subtraction or minus, then that is subtraction property. Alright. So, in properties of equality, meron tayong addition property of equality. But, meron din subtraction property. Because, if we subtract from this part, you must also subtract on the other part of the equation. But here, this is different. Pattern ang sinusundan natin dito kasi sabi ko nga kanina, consistency. Okay, so itong inuna mo, yun din ang unahin mo sa kabila. So, meaning, we will form a pattern. Here, 6 minus 8. Saan galing yung 8? It is the denominator. Equals 3 minus 4. Saan galing yung 4? The denominator of the second ratio. Okay? I would like to emphasize that 8 and 4 came from you in our denominator. So it is different in the properties of equality, ha, kasi ang properties of equality, pag equal, kung anong nilagay mo dito, yun din dapat ang ilalagay sa kabila. So that is equality. Here we are studying proportion. So proportion meaning we will generate a pattern that will make the two ratios equal. So to make this equal ratio, we must follow this pattern, either addition or subtraction. You must add the numerator to the denominator of the denominator, yan, or subtract, then they can still form a proportion. Okay, so these are the 5 properties of proportions, and take note that this is all under the umbrella of cross multiplications. These are generated from the cross multiplication property. I will not show you now the derivation of this. Instead, you will learn and you must read the definition of its properties in order for you to solve given proportions. So here, letter A example, makikita ninyo, we have here x is to 5 as 24 is to 30. Take note of this, ang pinaka-general lang dito is the cross multiplication lang talaga. Pero in some cases, you can apply the other properties kasi kaya present niya lahat ng mga properties of proportion. So here, what would be the value of x in order for us to form the proportion? Okay, so the first property will be the cross multiplication. So let us cross multiply x times 30. So this will be 30x. Take note of that. Then 5 times 24. I will show you a shortcut. If you multiply a number by 5, this is very easy. Okay. Sana ma-internalize nyo ito. If you multiply a number by 5, you just get the half of a number. What is half of 2? 1. What is half of 4? 2. May natira? Wala. So 0. So 24 times 5 is 120. So that's it. This is 120. Okay? Is it amazing? If you multiply a number by 5, you just get the half of a number. Half of 2, 1 half of 4 is 2. And may natira, wala, 0. Sir, paano kung yung number ay odd numbers? Di magbigay tayo ng odd number. Let's say, for example, 67 multiplied by 5. Pwede pa rin niyang i-multiply using that principle. Kalahati ng 6 ay 3. Diba? 7, wala naman kalahati yan. Di ang gagawin mo, yung mas mababa sa 7. Di 6 din. May natirang isa. So 6, kalahati ng 6 is 3. Yung natira na isa, yung multiply mo sa 5. So the product of 67 and 5 is 335. So very easy to multiply a number by 5 because you just get the half of that number. Alright? So ang main natin dito, we are interested to the value of x. What should be the entry for x so that that this ratio is equivalent to this ratio. In order for you to do that, you must cross multiply. That's why x times 30 is 30x, 5 times 24 is 120. And then let us divide both sides by 30. Why we divide by 30? Because we want to cancel 30 here and we only left with x. So ganyan talaga sa algebra, we always find for the value of x. Kaya wag nyong i-relate ito sa x ninyo kasi ang x sa algebra is only the unknown, hindi yung x na tinutukoy na x mo na bitter pa ngayon. Okay? So just cancel 0. 12 is the new number. So 12 divided by 3, or how many 3 are there in 12? There are 4. Okay, so we already solved for x, which is 4. Now, we can then conclude that the missing part here is 4. So 4 over 5 as 24 over 30. Oh, I will now eliminate here. Oh, sige. Dito ko na lang ilagay. X, no. Palitan na natin yung x ng 4. So 4 over 5 is equivalent to 24 over 30. Ayan. So, the value of x that will make these two ratios a proportion is 4. Now, let us investigate. Paano nangyari yan? Ito. I will show you a shortcut and let us apply yung alternation property. Okay, ito kasi yung alternation property. I will think of a number that if I multiply to 5 to makes 30. Okay? Take note of that. What I will multiply to 5 to makes 30, and that number is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. Now, this is consistency ulit. Kung anong minultiply mo dito sa denominator, you will also multiply to the numerator. Now, you think of a number that we already identified 6 as our multiplier to generate another ratio. Here, what is missing is x. So, since this is already defined as 6, 6 is also a number that is a multiplier of x to produce 24. What number if I multiply to x to produce 24? And here comes 4. 4 times 6 is 24. So this is one way, or the shortcut way in defining or finding the missing part of the proportion. So 6 times 4 is 24, and that 4 will be your x. Now, that is just a shortcut. Let us also apply that the same in letter B. Okay, dito sa letter B, this must be our last example and you will do the rest. Okay, what I am trying to establish here is the other properties, which is the kung meron tayong common multiplier sa ratio kasi para maka-generate ng another ratio. I-explain ko muna yung stand ko dito. Bakit ginawa ko yan? Halimbawa, meron akong ratio dito na 3/4. Halimbawa, ano yung mga katumbas nito na proportion? So, kung pag magmumultiply ako dito ng 2, tsaka 2, 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 4 is 8. This new ratio is proportional to this. What other ratios that forms proportion to 3/4? Sige, sunod ko nga yung 3. Sige, magsunod ako ng 3. Yan, 3 dito, 3 din. So, 3 times 3, that will make a product of 9. And 3 times 4, that is also 12. See, we can also generate another ratio that is proportional to the original ratio, which is 3/4. And take note, these 3 ratios are also proportional. Again, let us try another. Let us generate another ratio that is proportional to the original ratio, which is 3/4. So this time I want 5. Yan, kasi ang 5, perfect 5. Yan. 5 times 3 is 15. Hindi na ata nakikita din sa ating recording. So I will put here 5 times 3, that is 15. Okay? 5 times 4, kalahati ng 4, 2. Then, may natira, wala. Okay, so 20. 5 times 4 is 20. Again, ladies and gentlemen, 15 over 20 is a ratio. And this ratio also is a proportion to 3/4. Okay, so this is my stand again, that this common multiplier to the original ratio, if you multiply it, you can generate as many ratios that is proportion to the given ratio. You wanted to form a proportion. That's why my stand here is 6 times 5. Okay, kanina, i-review lang natin kasi sasobrahan natin siguro ng information ulit at hindi na natin na naaalala. Laging ganyan, no? Pag we overthink, kapag nag-overthink tayo, we always forget something. Kaya dito, pag napapalawak na natin yung discussion, ayan, medyo marami tayong nakakalimutan. But, kahit ganon na medyo marami tayong nakakalimutan, we must go back to basic. Yan ang lagi ninyong tatandaan. If you encounter many struggles and naitaon na nag-overthink ka na, masyado ka ng maraming naiisip, meron ka ng marami kang nakakalimutan. So, you must find time to go back to basic. You must review, alalahanin mo kung ano ba yung main, ano ba yung pinakaunang gagawin mo. Okay? So, dito na tayo sa first explanation natin. So, dito kasi, we always do the cross multiplication or cross product. But here, we will establish another property that what we did here. Ito, mag-isip lang tayo ng number A. Ayan, isipin lang natin na simple. Ano yung bumultiply mo sa 5 para maging 30? Kaya yan ay naging 6. Tama? So, 6 times 5 is 30. And take note, consistency. Kung ano yung multiply mo dyan sa denominator, yun din ang multiply mo sa numerator. This time, unknown yung ating multiplicand. This is the multiplier ng multiplicand. Ano kaya yung multiply natin to make the product of 24? Diba 4? 6 times 4 is 24. Therefore, our original ratio, just like here, is 4/5. Ang minultiply natin dyan ay 6. 6 times 4, 24. 6 times 5, 30. Therefore, the value of x here is 24. Okay? Dito, in-inverse lang ito. Alam nyo na, 4/5. Anong nawawala? 24. The same din yung principle dyan that 4/5 yan equals x over 30. Tingnan nyo maigi ito para makita ninyo, ha? 'Di ba parehas yung mga entry natin dito, parehas na yung entry. Dito nawawala yung x pero parehas yung 30. What do you think is the value of x here? Di alam na, 24 na agad yan. Paano? Let us do first the cross multiply product, the cross multiplication. Okay? So, sa cross multiplication, mas laling ito kasi yung laging nauuna, di ba? 4 times 30. And take note, that is 120. Okay? So, 5 times x. 5 ba ito? 5 times x, tama. That is 5x. Now, we will divide both sides by 5. Ayan, 5. So, cancel na yan. X dito. So, dito, how many 5 are there in 12? Diba? There are 2 kasi 5, 10. Mayroong natirang dalawa. So, how many 5 are there in 20? There are 4. Yan. So, in this case, the value of x here is 24. Okay, ulitin natin, class. Gamit ang ating way. Yan. Yung ating short way. The same. You think of a number that if we multiply by 5, we will get 30. That number is 6. 6 times 5 equals 30. Now, the same case tayo, kung anong multiply mo sa denominator, yun din also multiply sa numerator. So, 6 times 4, that is 24. That's why the value of x is 24. Ayan na, hindi pala nakita sa live, pasensya na. Okay. Yan, medyo maliit kasi yung screen natin. Kaya ganun, no? Ulitin ko na lang. Hindi ko nakikita sa monitor. Yan. So, Dito ang ginawa natin is cross multiply kasi that is the first property in proportion. Cross multiplied. The product of the means is equal to the product of the extremes. Or in other words, that is cross multiplication. 4 times 30 is 120. 5 times x is 5x. Divide both sides by x. Bakit? Kasi we are interested to the value of x. We will get the value of x. That the properties that apply to eliminate 5 is to divide both sides by 5. So cancel 120 divided by 5. Or how many 5 are there in 12? There are 2. Okay? Bakit 2? Kasi 5, 10. Meron pang natirang dalawa. Kasi 12 yan. 20 is the new number. How many 5 are there in 20? There are 4. Meaning, the value of x is 24. In our way, in solving for the missing part, is just here. Ito. What number that if we multiplied by 5, we will get 30. The number is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. Consistency ulit. Kung ano yung multiply mo sa denominator, yun din ang multiply sa numerator. So, 6 times 4, that is 24. Alright? So, I guess you can now able to find the missing part of the given proper proportion. In activity 1, ito napakadali lang. So, you just read the properties earlier na prinisan ko sa inyo. Then, you will just identify what property is illustrated in each given. So, you write cross property, alternation, inverse, addition, or subtraction. So, masasagot nyo ito kung babasahin nyo yung properties. Yan. In letter B, use the properties of proportion indicate in each item to complete each statement. Then write your answer on the blank provided. So, ito lang cross multiplication. Ito yung una Yan. Ano din ang ilalagay mo dito? Di syempre ito. Yan lang naman ang ilalagay mo. That is cross multiplication. Then, it is alternation property. Tandaan ninyo, pag alternation, 5 over 10, di alam na, 4 over 8. Again, consistency is very important. What about inverse? Tignan mo, inverse, ayan, napunta doon. Ito, napunta sa denominator. So, what will be here? Yan, ito doon. So, kayang-kaya nyo na yan. Very easy. What about this addition? Addition lang pala tignan mo, 10 plus 12. Saan kinuha? 12. Dito, sinasabi ko, this is different in addition property of equality. Okay, here is proportion. Kaya kung proportion, pattern ang hinahanap natin. So, ang i-add mo naman dito is 6. So, I know you can do that. And subtraction. The same din sa addition and subtraction. Alright, in activity 2, solve for x. You can also apply yung cross multiplication or cross product dito. Okay? So, in number 3 here, 28 over 4 is equal to 7 over x. Okay, dalawa ito Do not combine, no? Okay, sige. Ang gagawin nyo dito is mamili na lang kayo ng isang isosolve ninyo to solve for x. Mamili lang ng isa kung saan dyan. Okay? Ito, 3/4. Okay, madali lang. Okay. Ito dapat ay number 4. Yan na yon. So, ang number 3 nyo is yan. Itong number 4. Hindi lang na-enter. Okay? Same case here. Don't mind this. Don't mind this. Just focus on number 6. So, number 5, yan ang i-consider. Okay? Alright. So, there are application here. So, we will expand that in our next lesson, no? So, those who finish this lesson, for your attendance, please comment this. For your attendance. Comment. Okay. Proportion. Sa mga nandito pa at the end of this session, you comment proportion para alam ko na hanggang ngayon ay nanonood pa rin. Proportion / your full name. Okay, so ito yung titignan ko ha. Ito yung ating magiging attendance proportion, then full name section. Full name and section. Okay, so this is the code for your attendance today. I will consider your attendance. If you finish this video lesson, you comment proportion / full name and section. So by that, thank you so much for until the end of this video ay nanonood pa rin. Ayan, titignan ko to sa inyong comment.